This video, what I'm going to cover, excuse me, is we're going to dual boot our computer. Currently, what I have running, this is in a virtual box, but this does also work. These exact steps also work on just regular hardware. I've already got my box set up, so I'm not going to show you how to dual boot on a physical machine. We're just going to use a virtual box here. Again, it works out the same way. So what we're going to do is we're going to log in to our Windows machine. Now, there's a few things that we need to remember. It is best to have the older software installed first. This is if you were to like dual boot XP and Windows 7, you'd want XP installed first. That way Windows 7 will detect XP, but not vice versa. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, when you're dual booting Windows and Linux, it is best to have Windows installed first, basically for the same reason. Grub knows how to detect Windows, but Windows doesn't necessarily know how to detect Grub. So what we're going to do is have Windows installed first. It's also works out better if Windows is on the first drive in your array or in your serial. Basically, you just want it as drive 0 or something like that, and you put Linux on the secondary drive. All right, so with that said, what we have going on here is we're at our regular Windows 7 desktop. What we'd want to do is we'd want to put our CD or a thumb drive in. In this case, what I'm going to use is Linux Mint 17.1 Rebecca Cinnamon 64-bit. This window is going to pop up. This will pop up on YouTube after you put your CD in. We're just going to close that window, and then what we're going to do is restart Windows. Now, what you may or may not end up having to do is go into your BIOS and change it to where it boots off a CD or off a thumb drive, or whatever you decided to set that up as, which is going to be outside the scope of this video, because there's just so many different BIOSes, there's so many different ways to get in, there's so many different settings. But what you're looking for is you want to change the boot order. And that's a common phrase across all BIOS. So just go Google how to change boot order on whatever you have, whether it's Toshiba, whether it's a Dell, whatever. And you want to change the boot order to where the CD is going to be booted from first. This can be a temporary setting, or you can leave it that way if you really want to. That just means it's going to look at the CD-ROM before it looks at the hard drive. So what we already did is we've moved past that point, and we booted up, and this is the Linux Mint installation screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start Linux Mint just by hitting the Enter key. And Linux Mint is going to boot up here. Now, this is a live DVD, so it's not doing anything at all to your hard drive yet. So if you've never looked at Linux Mint and you just want to get in there and play around with it, it's highly advised you do that. It's also highly advised that you back up any files that you want to save, just in case something goes wrong. This is going to be a step-by-step procedure, and I'll show you how to do this step-by-step, and it's all recorded, and you'll see every single window, and I will annotate vocally every single step. This should not go wrong, but you know Murphy. If it can, it will. Okay. So here we are on the live CD, live DVD desktop. This is Cinnamon. This looks actually a lot like Windows 7. Being Linux Mint, it's already got a lot of high quality software in here. I'm not going to do a review. I'm just slowly going over this so you can see the caliber of software that's already included in Linux Mint. And the reason why I open this panel up is so I can change my display. Since I run dual monitors, I'm going to take up both monitors. There we go. Now I can play with my full scope here. Okay. That step, of course, is not required if you have a single monitor. So we're going to go ahead and close that. All right. What I did in preparation is I have this one hard drive that I've got Windows 7 installed on. I have another hard drive that is completely blank. It's not even formatted. And that is the drive we're going to install Linux on. That is also not required if your hard drive is large enough. You'll see that as we go through this installation process. So we double click on this icon here in the desktop. It says Install Linux Mint. It brings up this window right here. You can read the release notes if you wish. Choose your language over here on the left. Click Continue. I have check marks on all three of these because I do have at least 9.2 gigs of available space. We are plugged into AC power, and we do have an internet connection. Speaking of internet connections, if you're a wireless user, the first thing you need to do is go down here in this little taskbar and make sure that you are actually connected to the internet. This happens to be running on NAT, so it thinks it's a wired connection. My host machine is actually a wireless. But in any case, you want to make sure you go in here, and before we continue, if you are on wireless and it is password protected, you need to go in here and give it your password so it can get on the internet. If you had not already done that, it would come up here and there'd be an X there that says that you are not connected to the internet. So you can close this, get on the internet, and then reopen this. All right. And wired is very similar too. If this says that you're not connected and you're on a wired connection, you need to figure out why. All right, so we're going to continue since we got check marks in all three. Okay, now on this screen right here, installation type, this is where we need to read every single word, every single sentence on here to make sure that we are not going to mess something up. Even though we already backed up our data, we're still going to make sure that we do this step by step and read everything so we don't click the wrong button and end up completely frying our entire installation. The very first option says Install Linux Mint alongside Windows 7. So he had already detected that I had Windows 7 on this machine already, which is an excellent thing. Documents, music, and other personal files will be kept. You can choose which operating system you want to each time the computer starts up. Excellent. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we're going to click Continue. And now what it did is it detected SDA right there. It's the first drive in line. Okay. And this is what it's proposing. It's going to allocate the space by basically chopping your drive in half. It's going to resize the partition for you. Isn't that cool? So you'll have Windows over here on this side, and then you'll have Mint on the other side. Well, that's not what we want. Not in this particular example. If you only have one hard drive, yes, this is what you want, and you can resize this however big you want it. But what we're going to do is go down here, click this little link. It says Advanced Partitioning Tool, because we're going to tell it to use the other hard drive. When you see we got SDA that's got Windows on it, and SDB down here has nothing on it, and this is the drive we're going to use. So I'm going to create a new partition table. You have selected the entire drive to partition. If you proceed, with creating new partitions of the table, then all current partitions will be removed. Excellent. All right, so what we got here is I'm going to click on the free space. I want to click the plus button because we're going to add a partition, and we're going to make that partition 10 gigs. This is going to be for our swap. This is actually optional if you have a lot of RAM. Like, for example, my host machine has 24 gigs of RAM. I don't have to have a swap partition. There's plenty of RAM. But we're going to create one anyway, just to show you how to do it. And it's recommended that this swap partition be at least the same size as your RAM. So if you have 4 gigs, it should be at least 4 gigs. Some people say it needs to be double. Whatever. It does need to be at least the same size. Make sure we got swap area here. Primary, we're going to put it at the beginning of the disk. I'm going to click OK. All right. So now we're going to click on free space again. Click the plus. Change this back to primary. and then we're going to make sure this says ext4, and then we're going to put a slash in here. This is going to be our root partition. You can go through and make different partitions. Excuse me. You can go through here and make other partitions. We're just going to keep it simple. All right. So now we're going to have Windows up here on drive A, and we're going to have Linux on drive B. Device for bootloader installation. You need to make sure this says A. I know we're putting Linux on B, but you need to make sure this says A. And the reason why you have to do it on an A is so Grub will see this Windows installer. Do not put this on B, put it on A. And click install. That says if you continue, the changes listed below will be written to disk. Otherwise, you will be able to make further changes manually. Well, we already know that's exactly how we want to set up. Make sure it's over here on drive B, be there, and we'll go ahead and click continue. All right, that's the correct time zone. Let's see, this is for me. Choose your keyboard layout. English, continue. And we're going to put in our name. And name the computer. This is what name the computer will have on your network if you use a network. Username Scott's going to be fine. And put in a good password. You can either log in automatically, you can use a password, or encrypt your home folder. You know, this is personal, whatever is the policy of your personal private network. All right, it's done. Now we can either continue testing or we can reboot. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to reboot because we want to make sure that nothing happened to our Windows partition. So we're going to go ahead and click reboot. This will kick your CD tray out automatically. It says remove installation media and close the drive, if any, and then press enter. So what we're going to do is down here, go to devices, CDs. See, it's already kicked it out. So we're just going to hit enter and let it reboot. And congratulations, you're now dual booting. It's that simple. All right, this is Grub version 2.02. And if you notice on here, it's got Linux Mint at the top, and it's got a recovery mode here, and then it's got a couple memory testers, and there down at the bottom is your Windows 7. It's that simple. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and boot into Mint 17. I'm going to show you how to access your Windows 7 partition from Linux. Now, while this is booting up, I'm going to talk about a couple things on that topic. Some people say it's a dangerous thing to do, and 10 years ago it definitely was. In the last 10 years, Linux is got to where it can handle NTFS pretty reliably, but some people still say it's a bad idea. It's up to you. It's personal choice. If you don't want to, I'll show you how to completely isolate Linux from Windows. Or if you want to mount it, I'll show you how to mount it. This is MDM. This is Mint Display Manager. And what it does is it's going to rotate through these images while it's waiting for you to log in, which I thought was an excellent touch. So we're going to choose our username and go ahead and put in our password. We're going to boot to our desktop. All right. So our welcome screen popped up. I'm sorry. I have a condition with my throat, and sometimes I have to eat cough drops to help it out. Didn't mean to crunch in your ear. All right, anyway, here's our welcome screen, Linux Mint 17.1 Rebecca. I don't like seeing this every time I boot up, so I take this X out. This does have excellent information in it. If you're not familiar with Linux Mint, I highly advise that you donate to them. If you decide that Linux Mint is for you, just make a donation to them. I've seen people donate $100. I've seen people donate a couple pennies. Whatever you can get, or whatever you think that the distribution is worth, please donate. And it doesn't have to be demand. If you rather do Ubuntu, you like Ubuntu or Debian or any distribution, you find a distribution you like, contribute to that distribution. Okay, so now we're on our desktop. The first thing we're going to do is make sure we have an internet connection, which we do, connected to the wired internet. Get my wallpaper back. So remember, that was on a live DVD. There we go. And as you can tell, it looks exactly the same way that the live DVD did. Take my mirroring off, apply, keep this configuration, and there we go. All right, everything over here looks like it's running just fine. I don't see anything missing. Okay. All right, so there's two windows we're going to need. We're going to double click on home here. We're going to move it over here. I'm going to show you now is how to mount your Windows partition automatically. And we need a terminal window. All right. Over here in devices, this drive right here, this is our Windows machine. So you see the Windows users, system information, program files, that thing right there. The reason why we click on this first is it makes the system automatically mount the drive. So when we come over here and do a df-h, we see it running down here on drive A. See SDA2. Up here, our root file system is on SDB2 because we're on a second drive. All right, currently it's mounted in a temporary folder. But what we're going to do is we're going to make it to where it mounts on a permanent folder. The reason why we wanted it mounted is so we can check to see exactly what partition on drive A that we're dealing with. So over here, we're going to click this eject button. Basically what that does is it makes the system unmount. And then we're going to sudo blkid, which is short for block ID. And we're looking for the same partition right here, dev SDA2. And we put in our password. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this line, copy that text, and then what we're going to do is sudo nano etc fstab, or fstab, whatever it's short for. We're going to come down here to the bottom, give ourselves a couple lines. I always like putting this comment in. That way I've got system stuff separated from stuff that I did. And we're going to do a shift insert. And we're going to reformat this line to match what you see above. So it's going to be like this right here. Okay, so you have the device, the file system itself. Hit the tab button. I forgot something. Let's go ahead and comment this out for just a second. I forgot to do something. We need a mount point. All right, so go ahead and save that. That way I don't have to do it all over again. Sudo make directory win7. You have to have a mount point. If mount point doesn't exist, it won't like it. So now we go back over here, take our comment out. At the end of the file system, you hit tab and tell it your mount point, win7. And you hit tab again and come out to the end. This is the file system type, NTFS. Then we hit tab and we want to do defaults. Hit tab again, 0, tab again, 1. Okay. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to sudo mount -a, which means all. It's going to remount all the mounted devices this way, we'll go ahead and clear this window out. This way, when we do a df-h, down here at the bottom, you see that it is now mounted on the Win7 directory. So we can come over here, go into Home, go into our file system, and we have Windows 7. Again, if you feel uncomfortable about this, do not do that step. Don't worry about it. But if you do want to be able to read and write to it, from it, that's the way to do it. You may end up having to read and write using sudo. You may end up having to do it as root, whichever. Again, if you don't want to, if you're really nervous about Linux writing to an NTFS partition, especially if any loss to Windows would be catastrophic, even after your files are backed up, then don't do this. Don't take your chances. In my experience, I've never had a problem with this. I do it all the time, and it works every single time for me. It's very stable and reliable. But some people take chances, some people don't. At any rate, this little VM Linus file has got the Windows symbol on it. Don't delete that. Okay, so Linux looks like it's working just fine. Oh, and when you go in here to your computer thing here, this first disk is your Windows drive. The second one is your Linux drive. If you want to access your Windows drive, don't do it here. In fact, pretend like these two icons don't even exist. You have your CD here and your file system over here. If you need to get into your Windows partition, go this way here. Okay, go into your file system, then go into Windows 7. Okay. Now be very careful what you delete and what you edit and change, because if you delete the wrong thing, like ntloader, then you've pretty much wasted your Windows installation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to restart. No, we don't want to log out. We want to restart. And we're going to check our Windows partition to make sure that is also working. Why are you not restarting? Okay, so now we're going to come down here to the bottom and we're going to select Windows 7 Loader and hit Enter. It looks like Windows to me, but we're going to make sure. All right, let's make sure we can log in. What we're doing here is we're testing usability to make sure everything went in correct before we start customizing anything too much. It's very frustrating to install an operating system, especially like in a dual boot environment, only to find out that 6 hours after you did your installation that it messed up your Windows partition, and now you've got to wipe both drives and start all over again. So that's what we're doing now, is we're just testing usability to make sure everything is up and running before we go waste hours and hours and hours and hours tweaking our Linux installation. And we're on our desktop. It looks like everything's okay. I'm going to open up Explorer here. Now, one thing you'll see is that